Kansas City has a ton of extremely popular suburbs surrounding the metro area, and we've covered a lot of them on this channel, from Overland Park to Prairie Village to Fairway to Westwood, Lenexa, Olathe. I could go on and on and on, but there's one I haven't covered. After months of making these videos, it's possibly the most underrated suburb on the Kansas side is Shawnee, Kansas. Today, we're going to take a look at the schools, the shops, the location, the parks, everything that you could possibly need to know. And then at the end of this video, I'll give you 3 insider real estate secrets that you need to know if you're buying a home. One is an incredible investment opportunity that you can find several of in Shawnee. And finally, we'll discuss the cost of living in Shawnee and how it compares to many of the other suburbs like Overland Park. Now, before we go through the schools, the location, the shops, things to do, and all of that stuff, gotta lay the foundation, because like many of the suburbs and cities throughout the Kansas City area, the history of Shawnee, the role that it played as history throughout the country started to unravel, was absolutely critical. You'll see many landmarks throughout the Johnson County area that pay tribute to Shawnee. Now, where did it get its name? Well, it got its name from the Shawnee Indians, who were moved from the east to Shawnee, which at the time was known as the Great American Desert. There was nothing there. But the Civil War rolls around, and it becomes a critical transportation hub to Fort Scott and Fort Leavenworth. And many of the families and the farmers that lived in Shawnee ended up fighting in the Battle of Westport, which many know today as the Gettysburg of the Midwest. Now, if we fast forward even more, we've got the Great Depression that rolls around. Shawnee is full swing, an agricultural hub that's supplying fruit and vegetables to the entire Midwest region. The one thing that got many of the families in Shawnee through those harsh economic times were the incredible fruit and vegetables that they were producing there. Now, I bring this up because you'll see tributes to the history that Shawnee played, the role it played throughout the city, whether it's Pioneer Crossing Park or the Shawnee Indian Historical Site, which was the old boarding school that you'll find in Fairway near St. Agnes and Bishop Miege. Now, you can also dip your toes in exactly what life was like in Shawnee in the early 1900s by visiting Shawnee Town, which is in downtown Shawnee. You've got several things to see. It's a museum dedicated to what life was like at the time. You've got vintage gas pumps, historic storefronts, gardens, and everything in between. Now, Shawnee is on the Kansas side. It is west of downtown Kansas City. It goes all the way up against the Kansas River. The Kansas River borders to the north as well. You've got Lenexa to your south. If you wanted to go to downtown Kansas City, you're looking at about 25 at most if you're up against the river, to about 10 minutes if you're on the eastern edge of Shawnee. So 10 to 25 minutes and you're getting to downtown Kansas City. If you wanted to go to the airport and visit that new terminal at KCI, look at about 30 minutes, cross that river, then head 30 minutes to your north, and it'll get you there. Now, some of the surrounding cities, you've got Lenexa directly to your south. Olathe is south of Lenexa, but Shawnee falls on the top shelf of Johnson County. So you're looking at Merriam, Mission, Roland Park, and finally Westwood. Now, there's one term that is very, very confusing to people that are just moving to the area. A term that locals most likely will know and kind of use interchangeably, which is Shawnee Mission. Now, here's a picture of all of the cities that Shawnee Mission refers to. Basically, it's a term created by the United States Postal Service to describe the northern and eastern parts of Johnson County. Now, lastly, here are the 4 roads and highways that you need to know to live like a local in Shawnee. You've got 435 highway, which cuts through the middle of Shawnee. You've got K7, which cuts through the western edge of Shawnee. And then you've also got 2 really important streets that'll get you horizontally across Johnson County into Kansas City, Missouri. You've got Johnson Drive and you've got Shawnee Mission Parkway. And they both turn into each other once you cross the border of Roland Park and enter Fairway. And then once you cross state line, they'll turn into Ward Parkway. But those 2 streets will have you getting around the city like an absolute pro. Now, if you're thinking of living or moving to Shawnee, there are 2 school districts that you need to know about. And sometimes boundaries can be a little confusing, so we're going to break it down. 2 school districts. Here's a picture of them. You've got Shawnee Mission School District, which is serving most parts of Shawnee. It also serves kind of that top and middle shelf of all of those other cities in Johnson County. And then the western edge of Shawnee. you've got DeSoto. If you cross the river, it's a smaller, more rural city, and we'll talk about that in just a second because there's a big, exciting development coming to DeSoto, but their school district is very highly rated, and it covers those western edges of Shawnee, which are being developed right now. And we'll talk about those too because there's a lot of new home communities, new homes that are being built in that part of Shawnee. Now, here's a picture of all of the individual school ratings in Shawnee. You can see pretty much everything's an A minus, or above. These are some incredible schools. You can also see some of the private schools in that picture as well. But let's take a couple steps back. If you're watching this video, most likely this is not the first video you're watching about the Kansas City suburbs or different places you could live in the Kansas City area. Most likely, you've heard of Overland Park because it's in all of the ratings. You've heard of the Blue Valley School District in Overland Park, and that seems to be what a lot of my clients and people that are viewing these videos are comparing other school districts to. So here's the deal. Technically, according to niche.com, here's how they're ranked. They're ranked Blue Valley School District, DeSoto, right? That's right. DeSoto's number 2. And then you've got Olathe and then Shawnee Mission School District. The way they rank these can be very arbitrary. Also, these school districts are constantly expanding and developing, especially DeSoto, Olathe, and even the Spring Hill School District, which is south of Blue Valley. So here's the deal. The best way that you can find a really good school district that your children will excel in is to visit them. See this, it's just like buying a home. It's like once you step foot in there, you get an idea, a feeling for the environment, you'll know right then and there. And that's what will make it easy. But if you can, see if you can talk to some of the other parents that have their kids enrolled there, and they're going to give you the raw, unfiltered truth, all of the secrets that the administrators are most likely not going to be super thrilled about telling you. So that's my word of advice. It differs for everybody. What might be good for one student is it could be terrible for another student. You've got to dig deep and see what different programs they offer, and that's probably the best way to compare these school districts. Regardless, you can feel confident and rest easy knowing that these are some of the best school districts in the entire Kansas City metro and the entire state of Kansas, regardless of how niche.com ranks them. Now, if you're enjoying the video so far, hit that like button, subscribe so you see future videos like this and market updates, especially in this volatile time where we don't quite know what we're headed for here in the Kansas City real estate market. And of course, if you're looking to buy a home in Shawnee, go ahead, send me a message. We can talk about the pros and cons of Shawnee compared to many of the other cities, and we'll make sure you get the best option and the best value for your money. Now, what exactly makes a town that was originally known as the Great American Desert, what makes it unique in 2023? Well, there's a lot of land, and we'll talk about this in the real estate section too, but just so you know, there are about 23 different parks throughout the city of Shawnee. And one of my favorites, one of my dog's favorites, is the Shawnee Mission Park. You're looking at 1,650 acres of rolling green space, treed land. You've got a 120-acre lake with a swim beach, marina. The dog park actually connects to the lake. And here's some footage of my dog Oscar when he was an itty-bitty little puppy splashing around in the water for one of the first times. You've got a disc golf course. You've got a fire circle, fishing in the lake, hiking trails throughout. You've got shelters and playgrounds throughout as well. This is one of the biggest parks in the entire state of Kansas. Now, another thing happening in Shawnee, that's adjacent to Shawnee, is DeSoto, right? So we talked about DeSoto. It's a smaller, more rural city just to the west of Shawnee. Well, we've got the Panasonic battery plant that's going in over the next several years. So they're building this huge electric vehicle battery plant. They're going to hire 4,000 people, 4,000 employees. And where are most of them going to live? Now, I can tell you that there's not a ton of housing in DeSoto. Even though the housing in DeSoto is cheaper and it's older and there are some new developments there, it's not enough to house 4,000 additional people. Most of those people, I'm willing to bet, will end up in Lenexa and for the most part, Shawnee, which is going to be a huge source of commerce and growth for the entire city. Now, kind of like we mentioned at the end of the history section, we mentioned Shawnee Town, which is in downtown Shawnee. Here's a picture. Every little dot you see on the screen is a different restaurant, shop, or retail store, most of these are local businesses. There is so much to do. You could spend an entire weekend going through each of these different shops. And usually they're going to be family owned. They've been around for generations and they are historic, which is nothing wrong with that. Just a different experience altogether. Now, one of my favorite, I'm a big pizza guy. If you're a huge pizza person, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you're from Kansas City, what your favorite pizza place is. One of the ones that I hear from a lot of people is Old Shawnee Pizza. A lot of locals love it. Here's some pictures so you can get an idea of it. This is absolutely a place that I would stop if pizza's your thing. Now, one of the last things that I want to mention in Shawnee is for the kids is Splash Cove. It's a crazy water park that is just basically every kid's dream, especially my dream when I was a young kid. Residents pay about $6, non-residents pay about $10. This is an excellent place to go during the summer and those really hot months where you just feel like you need to be in the pool. Now, when it comes to buying a home in Shawnee, there are so many different options. I mean, you could spring for a brand new home in one of the best master plan communities, which we'll talk about here in a second, or you could buy a lot of land and build and develop it, or even partition it, which we'll also talk about here in a second. But in Shawnee, you're looking at a typical home value of around $356,000 because we round up here, and the year over year change is about 5.1%, which seems low, right? Because over the past year, real estate was on fire. Homes were selling left and right, $50,000 over asking here, $30,000 over there. Now, they've come down a little bit and plateaued. Here's a graph that'll show you exactly how quickly that happened, but you can see real estate values really shot up there between 2020 and 2022, and just now we're starting to see them plateau, but not free fall by any means. Now, as promised in the beginning, we've got the 3 insider tips for buying a home in Shawnee. Number 1 is that your money's going to go a lot farther than if you bought a home in Prairie Village, Fairway, Leawood, any of those higher end cities. The reason is because there's a lot of land, and a lot of this land was either they've got homes sitting on this land that were built in the 1950s and are ready to be torn down because those homes were not built to last this long, or you've got some budding new master plan communities, and we'll talk about those separately when we get to number 3. But the first point is your money's going to go a lot farther in Shawnee than it would in, let's say, Overland Park, for example. And we'll get to that when we talk about the cost of living. Number 2, this is for anybody who's looking to invest or to develop land, got lots with acreage. So here I'm going to show you 2 examples. The first one is a little underwhelming, but wait till I show you number 2. So here's number 1. $850,000. This home was probably built in the late 1900s or early 2000s. Very big house sitting on this land. You're paying a lot of money for that house. That's what a lot of that $850,000 is wrapped up in. 5,800 square feet. But what that equals out to is $141 per square foot, which is insanely cheap. In fact, my home that appraised recently in Overland Park appraised at about $270 a square foot. So $141 a square foot is insane. Exactly what we talked about in point number 1. Your money's going to go further. But let's peel back the onion even more. This home is sitting on 2.5 acres of land. Now, I know it's cliche, they're not making any more land, and it's only getting more expensive the longer it sits there undeveloped. So let's move on to the second one, which is absolutely jaw-dropping. Now, this one is $850,000 too, but if you look at the home, it was very clearly built in the mid-1900s. It says 1960, 1,800 square feet. At this price point, this is not quite what you would expect. But again, if we peel back the layers of that onion, you have 14.8 acres of land that you're sitting on. Now, why would anybody want to buy 14.8 acres of land? Well, it's the land itself that is worth a lot of money. So a smart move that could be made is if you want to build your own home on your own lot, why not buy this land, partition what you don't need, sell it off as individual parcels of land to a developer, because once we get to number 3, you'll see exactly why that's going to be lucrative. And then you've just made an incredible investment. You've chosen the best parcel for yourself to build your own home on, and you've made money in the process. Now, these are not the only 2 homes you'll see that come with acres of land. In fact, I've seen several listings over the last several months that are priced between $500,000, $600,000, and they're coming with acres of land. When we make a purchase like that, we're probably not caring too much about the property that's on it, the structure that's on it. We're most likely looking at that for the land value, which brings us to number 3, the new home communities you'll find in Shawnee. There are two big ones, and then the third will kind of wrap into point number 2. So you've got Canyon Lakes, which is a very popular one. I got so many requests to make my Canyon Lakes explained video explaining the builder, the location, the schools, everything that you could possibly need to know. If you'd like to take a look, I'll link it right here so you can check it out. Canyon Lakes. The other one, this is a premier luxury community like no other in Johnson County right now. It's developed by two incredible, highly respected builders in the area. You've got J.S. Robinson Fine Homes, and you've got Don Julian, who have partnered to develop Bristol Highlands, which sits between Shawnee and Lenexa. Some incredible homes going in there. You've got double-sided villas, you've got single-family villas that are standalone homes where you don't share any wall, and then of course you've got separate neighborhoods for larger lots, and then the neighborhoods with smaller, more efficient lots. And these prices go anywhere from $600 all the way up to over $1.5 million. Now, the last kind of point here with the new homes, these are some of the last new home communities we're going to see in Shawnee, because a lot of parts of Western Shawnee, a lot of those bigger communities have already been built. There's just not enough acreage, enough land to build a huge community like this. So what I anticipate seeing over the next decade or so is these big parcels of land that are being sold with single family homes on them. I expect exactly what we talked about to happen. Some developer is going to go in, or somebody's going to come in, buy the land, partition it, and then sell the rest of the land to developers, or they'll just develop and build it themselves. So why not get a head start and do it yourself now? Now, the final part of this video is the cost of living, and we'll compare Shawnee to many of the other cities in the Johnson County area. I'm going to show you two pictures that tell a completely different story. So here's the first one. It compares the cost of living in Shawnee to Kansas to the rest of the United States. You can see that Shawnee is just a couple points above what it would cost to live in the average of the United States, but it is overwhelmingly larger than the cost to live in Kansas, which we know a lot of Kansas is just kind of farmland. It's not going to cost a ton to live in most parts of Kansas, especially, central and western parts of Kansas. So that's kind of why. The next one that I'm going to show you, here it is. It's a map comparing the cost of living to other cities in Johnson County. And you can see that Shawnee is one of the least expensive places that you could live. There are a couple exceptions, which are Merriam, Mission, and Overland Park, which I think all three of those cities are extremely undervalued, and that's going to change significantly over the next decade. I'll make a whole separate video about that. Subscribe so you're the first to see it. But I think this map is a little off. So here it is again. I think Olathe is possibly more expensive than Shawnee, just because Olathe has seen a lot of new growth over the past several years. Shawnee is a little bit more built out, so they haven't quite seen the same trajectory that I think Olathe is headed for. So I just thought I'd throw that out there for you. But you can see you've got Lake Quivira. If you're interested in Lake Quivira, one of the most expensive places you could live in the Kansas City metro area. I'll link my whole video right here. And just a spoiler, Lake Quivira is near the top of that list. Now, you can see that compared to Overland Park, Shawnee, your money's going to go farther. It just is. But as people start moving to Olathe and Lenexa, because Overland Park's gotten so popular, everybody's trying to live in Overland Park, the cost is going up and up and up. But that's why I say Shawnee might just be one of the most underrated suburbs in the Kansas City metro area. So there you have it, everything you need to know about living in Shawnee. Do me a quick favor and hit that like button if you enjoyed it so that other people see this video. Subscribe if you'd like to be the first to see future updates that'll keep you on top of the very volatile housing market so that you get the best deal on your home. And of course, if you'd like to work with me, if you want to make sure you're buying a home in the best area in the Kansas City suburbs, you might have an idea of the suburb that you're looking at, but when it comes down to pinpointing the exact neighborhood, school district, etc., there are a lot of variables at play, and you want to make sure you're making a good decision that you're not going to have to move away from later on. I would love to help. All my contact info is below. Just shoot me a call, text, or email, and we can set you up for success. Thanks for watching the video. I will see you on the next one.